All right, everybody, welcome back to another Corona Geek. We're here to talk all about mobile app development, desktop app development, and TV app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we've got some great things to talk about. We've got some plugin stuff to talk about. We've got some bitmap stuff to talk about. We've got some community news and such to talk about. So let's just jump right into it. Joining me on the call today is Stephen Johnson from Zavala Studios. We also got Warren here with us, and we've got Scott Harrison on the line as well. Scott is in listen-only mode because I think he's actually incognito in a class. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that is super cool, just all by itself. Multitasking at its finest. I actually watched this thing that said you can't actually multitask. You can do time slices, right? And you can pay attention to things, just like a computer. You can pay attention to things very rapidly, but ultimately you kind of drop packets of information, and at some point you wind up not focusing on the things that you need to focus on. So, which is really interesting because I've always kind of equated computer science to life, and it's really kind of served me well. Learning new languages. Thinking about things like multitasking and stuff like that. When you look at how the computers are done and how people actually operate, there's a lot of correlations. So let's talk about some of the things that are happening here. We've got let's start with plugins. So Scott, I sent out an invite last night and said, hey, we're going to do the Corona Geek today. If you guys have anything you want to talk about, let me know. And I'm going to jump out of full screen here. And Scott came in and said, oh, yeah, I got lots of stuff to talk about. So let me see if I can screen share here. This is, where is my screen? There we go. Can you guys see that? Yeah, so, okay. So we got some plugins here that Scott has been working on. Let me put there we go. Put our faces up on the side here. Scott's been working on a few plugins. Of course, some of these are still in review probably and not on the store just as of yet, but they're interesting nonetheless, and I look forward to seeing them come out. One here is the More Info plugin. So essentially anything that you can get out of the Get Info from the Corona API. Looks like Scott is wrapping it up and making it sort of more of a convenience plugin than anything else. So if you want to get the battery level or the battery state, you want to get the total space available on the device, network status, those types of things, it's all kind of wrapping it up in this More Info plugin. So I think that's a great example. And we'll put links to all these in the show notes so that you can go check them out. He's already got the documentation up on his website, so even though the plugin may not be available just yet, you can still go and look and see what's there, and then maybe even give him suggestions as to what you would like to see if something is not, included. So that's cool. The other one here is ReplayKit. Now we talked about this last time, Warren, didn't we? You had mentioned Replay. The fact that you've done some implementation on iOS side, but hadn't looked into doing the ReplayKit stuff.
No, I think that was somebody else because I don't even know what ReplayKit is.
Oh, good. Well, I'm just making up conversations in my head.
Okay, I'm sure it's a valid one.
Yeah. And now that you mention it, I think I actually remember who I was talking with. But anyway, so yeah, ReplayKit basically allows you to be able to record gameplay and be able to broadcast it and stuff like that. So basically here he's got a plugin he's working on. It requires iOS 9 Plus for recording and iOS 10 Plus for broadcasting. And then for Android recording, it's built into the Google Play Game Services plugin, which Sergey just put out a fresh update on that with backwards compatibility and all that kind of stuff. So that was a major overhaul. And then what does it say here? We've got only works in iOS and not iOS Simulator. But if you look, so that he gave us a video. Let me just kind of flip back through here. So he gave us a video, and essentially what he's doing is, let's see here. He fires up the app. He's got the recording going. He brings up a different app, and then he's able to record basically what he's doing there. And then I assume, I haven't watched the full video yet. It's not very long. It's only 58 seconds long. I assume that you can then broadcast that back out later on. So this is pretty interesting. I personally have wanted to do, recording in an app for a long time. So this, I think, is exciting. I don't know, kind of geeky that way. I think being able to just record and also just if you wanted to, I could see putting this into, if you wanted to do like recording a session, like a user wanted to give you feedback or something, and you could just give them the ability to record their screen. That would be super helpful.
Yeah.
I can't remember who does that. Seems like there's an SDK for it that somebody had provided before. So ReplayKit kind of came out. Let's see here. Let me bring up the chat here. Yeah, so Scott's saying Everplay or Everyplay. Yeah, I think there was something else, a loopback or something like that. Also, maybe was doing something like that. Anyway, yeah, being able to give the user the ability to capture their screen is I don't know, makes things so much easier. I mean, there's times when somebody asks me for something, I'm like, look, I can type up an email, I can try to find all the right words and string them all together, but here, let me just show it to you. And then there's times when people are like, oh, I wasn't on that screen at all. I wasn't even there. You're like, oh, okay, well, then what I would have said to you wouldn't have made any sense. So that's good. Okay, so the other one here is the Taptic Engine. This plugin uses the Taptic Engine, which only work with iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, but hopefully in future devices. Yeah, they seem to be making a pretty big push into Taptic Engine kind of stuff. Yeah, so works on the iOS, but not the simulator. Yeah, I think that's pretty much a device-specific thing, right? I mean, they've just implemented taptic feedback into the home button, and then they also had it from the watch and stuff like that. So I think they also have it in the trackpad for the MacBooks. So I think that's a pretty big. It's starting to be sort of a design language across all their devices. Have you guys looked at the iPhone 7 yet? Have you gone to the Apple Store and looked at the phones yet?
No.
Yeah. I went Sunday morning, just to kind of satisfy a curiosity as to whether or not, so there's Scott, he's showing off his phone. I went Sunday to satisfy this curiosity, and I have the 6 Plus or 6S Plus, so just last year's model, and it just didn't move the needle for me. I was like, well, the home button thing kind of buzzing is kind of cool. The missing headphone jack, I'm kind of split on. I don't really know if I care that much or not. It seemed maybe a little snappier performance-wise. And the screen, I think I don't know if the screen has changed at all. It's pretty much the same. And then, of course, when you go to take pictures, I mean, that's the big seller, of course. Having that depth of field sort of effect applied automatically on images was cool. But you could only do that on the back side, of course. You couldn't do that on the front side, which I don't know if you would need a depth of field selfie. But, who knows? But a lot of the things that you could do, like zooming and all that kind of stuff like that, you could only do on the backside. And for my purposes, I really like to have, really like the camera in selfie mode where you can see yourself and shoot a video or take a picture or something like that. And all those features are kind of on the backside of the camera. So I was like, well, or the front side of the camera. I don't know which is it. Is the front side or the back side? Which is the side that's opposite of you? Is that the front or the back? Yeah. Warren says, who cares?
The front is considered the screen, and the back is the back of the phone. That's usually how it's done.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the backside camera is the one that's got all the juice. But anyway, I just didn't seem. I'm kind of tired of paying for upgrades. Really, I'm like, well, this phone does what I want it to do, right?
Well, did you see the iPhone 6S upgrade for the phone jack? That was hilarious.
No. They take it off of that?
Here, I'll see if I can find the link and post it in the chat.
Is it a parody or is it a real thing?
It's a spoof, but
It's
it's one of the best spoofs I've ever seen on Apple products.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like the splash resistant kind of business, the fact that it's, you could get it wet and not have any real, I don't know, negative results. But I don't know. I don't know. I've never dropped my phone in the toilet, and I don't tend to take it swimming with me, so I really don't know how much I care about that. But anyway, I went and looked. It didn't make that big a difference. My point was that the Taptic Engine thing was kind of cool, so I could see that being a plugin that has some teeth to it. Eventually, we'd be like, oh yeah, this is cool, because you could do some interesting things with it. I do like the watch. I do like the fact that it taps me on the arm when I get messages and stuff, which is great in noisy environments. So being able to access that on the phone and be able to make the phone do certain things would be kind of cool. Especially if you could do maybe a rhythmic communication where you're like, hey, 3 taps is this and 2 taps is that. I don't know. You can actually do that today in the settings. You can go into the accessibility and you can turn on. I don't remember exactly what the feature is, but there's a place there where you can set custom vibrations based on whether somebody's on a particular person. So if I'm getting a message from Steven, I can say, oh yeah, it can tap out, the Star Wars theme or something. Let's see here. The next one is OnePassword. So Scott's got a plugin in the mix for OnePassword. I don't know if you guys use OnePassword. You use a password safe, a password manager for your stuff.
Yeah.
You use OnePassword, or do you use something else? I know there's also
OnePassword. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also what's the other one? LastPass. LastPass is sort of a like OnePassword's Mac only. LastPass is sort of Linux, Windows, and Mac. And there's also a web browser extensions and all that kind of stuff like that. So essentially, keep all your passwords and all your important information in that in an encrypted form, and then you can access it from anywhere. OnePassword is kind of the same way, where you've got you can have it on your Mac, you can have a browser extensions, and then there's also an app that you can put on your phone that will allow you to access your passwords and stuff like that. So this is an extension that requires iOS 8 plus and OnePassword to be installed. So I want to know what you would do with this, though. I'm kind of like, so I guess you'd just be able to automatically log yourself into things. I'm looking at this. So OnePassword.show is one of the functions here. You got a listener. And what Scott says? Scott says, OnePassword allows you to store your passwords in a locker and access them with OnePassword. This is great for apps and games that have logins. A user is more likely to use a secure password, which can help prevent users from getting hacked with insecure passwords. OnePassword only has an extension for iOS 8 Plus and was submitted 2 weeks ago. Okay. And then he has a demo. Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me about the demo. The demo was over here. 41 seconds long. Just this was 16 lines of code, and it brings up OnePassword. And let's see here. Let's see what's he doing here. Is there any audio to this? I don't think there's any audio to it. So in the demo, he's creating me a login for Corona Labs, which is funny. And then it's okay. I'm trying to figure out what it's doing here. He says there's a anyway, I don't know what it does there, Scott. You may have to give us some more insights. I told him we would cover some of this on the After Dark as well. That way he could hop on and join us and maybe walk us through some of these things. But anyway, there's a way to hook into OnePassword, and most of the time, if you have something like this and you can see the possibilities for it, then you know exactly what you want to do with it. Which is what the great thing about plugins is that, not everything needs to be in the core. It doesn't need to be part of the foundation of Corona. It just needs to be something that's bolted on so that somebody can use it if they need to, like Like for instance, Bluetooth. Bluetooth is one of those things where not everybody needs it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this whole plugin movement that's happening with Corona. It's going to be cool. Or it already is cool, but it's going to be even more cool when the store gets totally set up.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for just a moment. I mean, of course, the latest thing to happen is that we introduced a new plugin, and we introduced splash screens, right? So now if you build an app with using the free Corona SDK, then get a splash screen that says powered by Corona Labs, and then if you don't want that, or you want to customize with your own branding, then you can just stop sharing here. Then you can buy the plugin and essentially have control over that. So the other part of that is that it's a paid plugin, which means it's the first paid plugin on Corona Marketplace, which is really exciting because that's the next step to allowing the community to be able to sell plugins as well. And we're actually going to be putting together. I've got to put that together this week and kind of get the word out. We're going to start putting together a little beta test group and say, okay, plugin authors who have already have something in the marketplace, if you'd like to participate, we'll get you in and start. Scott says, "Pick me, woo-hoo." We'll start testing that out, and what we're looking for in that is just people who have published a plugin that helps, and two, are kind of willing to give us the feedback and iterate with us back and forth on that sort of thing. Because it's one thing for us to put up a plugin, wire it up for payments, and run through all that ourselves, but it's another thing to have somebody else involved in that process, right? And we've got to get from where we are today to eventually down the road this self-serve model where a plugin author can come on, create a profile, submit a package, have it reviewed, get it approved, and have it live in the store, and then all that stuff is there's a it's kind of it all scales, right? So that we can have thousands of people doing this, and not just a handful of people doing it. So we're going to be opening up that, and so that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that because there are people like Scott who's putting out a bunch of plugins. Sergey, I think at last count, had 9 or so plugins. And so it would be great for those developers to then be able to say, okay, I think this is something that I'd like to sell. I want the community to support. If it's valuable to them, then they can buy it, and then that will help the plugin developer to continue to do the great things that they're doing. So I was actually talking with, which is interesting, because I was actually talking with Michael Wilson from Pony Wolf over the weekend, or the last week rather. He was here in Austin for the Austin Game Conference, which is kind of exciting because apparently in the past there was a game conference here in Austin, and then there was, I guess, some political fallout between organizers of groups or whatever. I don't know all the details, but then there wasn't a game conference here. So now they're trying to revitalize that and bring it back. And so this year was kind of the first year. And so Michael Wilson lives in Iowa, came in and participated, got a booth, showed off his Time Golf Squad app, and by the way, won an award. So congratulations to Michael. But anyway, we were talking about plugins, and he's got a whole bunch of stuff that he's done. Pony Tiled, which is a GitHub repo, his version of being able to work with Corona and Tiled together. He's got some other Pony fonts and all these other different things, and he would like to take some of the work that he's done, and turn it into plugins. But he's like, okay, well, some things get built on top of each other, right? Like using the Tile plugin is something that using the tiled engine is something that you would need in order to be able to use another plugin that does maybe something something else that is a kind of a helps you along, is a tool, that a convenience tool. So there's this aspect that some plugins, I guess my point being is that some plugins are a natural fit for a paid plugin, and some plugins are just like, well, I don't think you would sell this plugin, but you could sell other plugins that go along with it, right? So you may release a library that's kind of the foundation for something that you could then sell additional plugins into. That makes any sense. So there's this whole world of plugins and paid plugins and all this stuff like that. It's just on the horizon, and I'm just looking forward to seeing it all come together. Especially for like Scott. Scott's all excited. He's creating all these plugins, and we want to see more of that for sure. And so the other part of that is that, okay, so now you can sell a plugin. We want to get to the point where we've got multiple, plugin authors who are able to sell their wares, and then beyond that is assets. So we've got to get to the point where people can sell assets, because I think, while there may be somebody in the community who may not be interested in creating and supporting a plugin, there are plenty of people who could say, "Oh, well, I have lots of assets. I can draw a picture. I can make an audio file. I can do these things and put them up there for the community to purchase." And I know that's a question we get all the time. People are like, "Hey, where do I get sprite sheets? Where do I get this and that?" And we point them to various resources online. But Scott says he can make a good stick figure. Hey, the stick figure games. I like the stick figure games. A good stick figure sprite asset pack, I think is, it takes a lot of talent to create. Anyway. So let's look at, let's go back out to the blog here. Let's see here.
Before we do that, I'd like to ask Scott a couple questions about his plugins.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Let me open it up.
Sure.
Questions.
So Scott, are these native plugins, or are they majority of them Lua? Or is it a mix?
Okay, so he's operating through chat here, so I'll be his voice for those who are listening to this later. He says they're native.
Cool.
Yeah. Are there any plugins that you think, Warren, since you're asking, is there any plugins that you think that like off the top of your head that you would love to see created?
Yep. SVG, vector support, for taking assets because I think that was one of the big strengths of Flash, that you could create big games with the compile version of the game stays very small. And I'm not talking about vectors being able to display as vectors, but something like this new plugin that just got released, which would allow you to take SVG assets and then convert them to bitmap on the fly, or that for that particular device. So you're not creating all this array of different bitmaps, just the bitmaps the user or the player needs. And I think that would kick, it's already cool. I really like Corona. I think it's very tiny, but I think it would be that magic bullet that you could create much bigger games that could be downloaded easier for especially places where they don't have the bandwidth. Rob mentioned that last time when we were on, that people in third world countries don't have the bandwidth that we do, and it would just be a lot easier for them to adopt games that would be bigger. So that would be my number one.
Just to chime in here real quick, this is Rob. We posted, I guess, probably on Friday, the texture bitmap post. And while it talks about a memory bitmap plugin, it's really more of a sample for enterprise users to do this. We've added a feature for enterprise developers called a texture resource external, which lets you access a image on the C side, manipulate it in some form or fashion, and get it back over into the Lua side as a texture. And one of the things that was mentioned as a potential possibility is being able to do that SVG to raster conversion on the C side, where there are obviously more libraries capable of handling that. And it's just really a matter of some plugin developer taking the initiative to do that. So
yeah, I saw that post. I thought it was really exciting. But like you said, it's not quite ready for Corona developers just yet. But it could be brought to them via a plugin developer.
Yeah, so and I think the sooner we get this marketplace open for paid plugins, then more people might be excited to say, "Oh, well, I might be able to sell this SVG plugin." So,
yeah, I think some people are maybe waiting to see, if this thing comes to be a reality, and that's when they'll want to jump in and really do it, because creating as you saw there, Scott's got documentation on his site, and so you got to create the code, you got to create the package, the plugin package, and you got to create the documentation, and then after that, it's like creating a child. You have to support it and maintain it. So.
Yeah, I found that testing actually was the hardest, longest part. Doing all your own QA is that takes a long time. The documentation is a pain. Nobody really likes to write docs, but it's not difficult. You just have to slog through it. But the testing, you got to test for every case and imagine how people are going to use it. And I find that to be the case for games too. It's just QA, but as a solitary developer, is pretty tough. It would be cool if there was some kind of community beta program that you could set up, and you could test, you could have them QA it. It would help, I think, find some of the bugs that get generated with these plugins and speed it up. But right now, it's still pretty cool the way it is.
Okay. So some sort of test group. Interesting. Wonder how we would, the best way to facilitate that, because you're really just trying to think that out. You've got the piece on the back end, right? You'd have to almost have a beta plugin group.
Yeah, like an early release. Just open it up in the forums, and anybody who wants to get it could go to this link.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't be. They would have to understand that it's not ready for prime time just quite yet.
Right. Which is always a challenge with that kind of stuff, because people get excited, want to use it right away. This is great. Let me do that. Cool. Well, Stephen, I know you had some thoughts on this bitmap stuff. Did you want to shed any light on this, or?
As I'm saying here in the chat, I have got partial SVG supports, but I haven't really brought it to maturity. So, and it was in another thing I was working on, and I took it out for now, so I don't have it to show. But yeah, it's definitely possible.
We do get people, because when somebody signs up for Corona, we send them a series of things like, hey, here's some getting started resources, and here's some text editors that you can use, and those types of things. And we do get people asking about being able to connect into C libraries, which is, really interesting. I don't. That's not my first thought as a Lua user, as a Corona user, but some people are wanting to definitely tap into, other things. Let's see here. Let's go back to the blog. There's a few other things here. So I mentioned earlier we were doing the. We'll go to this, and then we'll come back to the preferences thing. But I know I mentioned that the splash screen thing was, of course, available now, and some people have submitted their splash screen design ideas for the contest that we're running. So basically, what this is we decided we were give everybody the opportunity to participate in creating a splash screen that we could all be proud of. And so we opened up a contest and said, hey, just email me your submissions. And of course, all the details are here in the blog post. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put, so far we think that a good solid cutoff date would be October 1st. We'd say, hey, look, by October 1st, get all your submissions in. And then from there, we'll make these available to the community. The community can have a little opportunity to sort of vote on the ones that they like the most. And then from there, what we'll try to do is, either just depending on who the winner is, like what the winner is, the final design, or maybe some elements of it, or whatever. We try to implement those into the splash screen. So here in the blog post, we've got some guidelines. We've got the media kits. You can go grab the PNGs for the logo and all that stuff, and then how to submit. So basically, people can submit their ideas. And so if I bring up I'm going to give a little sneak peek here of some of the submissions. And I have to apologize in advance. I have a few that I received over the weekend that are not here represented yet. Let me just double click on this, see if I can bring it up. So now this was Scott. Scott was, Scott's the hot on the trail there. He actually was the first one to submit. So today the splash screen says powered by Corona Labs. And I think Scott here, he was just throwing in like, hey, I think it should say made with, and then Corona SDK, and then the logo. Those are, sort of the elements that he would like to see on the screen. And then we had a few other submissions. For somebody wanted to play with Lua and Corona, which are like, moon and sun sort of thing. So they played with that. That was kind of cool. And then a light and a dark version. And people had told us, they're like, hey, we'd like to have a light and a dark version. There's some split as to what light and dark means, right? Some people think a gray, some people think a white, some people think, maybe you should be able to pick your own color, those types of things. But I thought these were fun and playful. I mean, this is almost a Google approach. You know how Google kind of changes up the image on the homepage periodically? I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But of course, it wouldn't go with everybody's app, right? Because some people have business apps and some people have, like shooter games. And I don't know, if they want something that's a little more whimsy or not. But, anyway, so just kind of exploring some elements and some ideas. Of course, ultimately, the community will vote and pick the ones that they think that makes sense. So, but here's a light and dark. Here's just a very basic, Corona SDK. And I say basic, like it's hard to get down to the essence of something and just make it simple. Anytime a client says, I just want it simple or clean, the price goes up. But, this is a great job of making something just there you go, Corona SDK. And really the purpose of the splash screen is to do our brand recognition, getting out there and people to go, what is this Corona SDK thing, right? Brand awareness. Here, Noah did some co-branded stuff because we threw that out in the blog post as well and said, hey, don't limit yourself. If you want to do co-branded stuff or you want to see what that would look like, throw that out as well. Let's see what kind of ideas come out of it. Here's his Loop Hoops, which we talked about on the last Corona Geek After Dark. Let's see here. So here's another one, kind of just made with Corona SDK. So there's, as you can see, there's sort of variations. There was one that said Corona SDK on it, and this one says made with Corona SDK. So it's just kind of, I don't know, kind of how powered by, it just kind of depends on, I guess, some of it's split on kind of what people are accustomed to seeing and what their personal opinions are. And then some of it's just kind of like, well, how much do you need in order to communicate an idea? So here's some variations. I think the person, I told the person who submitted this, I said, hey, great job on considering landscape and portrait, because most of these so far have only been, portrait. And while we like to think that everything fits, landscape and portrait, it's sometimes a challenge to get things to work correctly in the different modes. So here, let me flip through these. So those are kind of variations to black and white, orange. Some people have said they don't like the orange, of the Corona logo. So it's kind of been, it's fairly consistent, but somewhat inconsistent in some places. Like here's a color background, right? Some people are just like, hey, you should be able to specify a color. Oh, okay. I can totally see that because your color scheme may warrant a color. But then I'm sure there are plenty of people who would balk at a kind of a cobalt blue or something like that. Here's more of a gray, muted. So, just kind of, again, the ideas. I thought this one was kind of cool. I was like, ooh, this one, I think I could do a tattoo. do a tramp stamp. Oh, Corona Labs. I see Stephen there. He's like, oh, he went there. Okay, good. Take it right up to the line, Stephen, and just push it right over. But yeah, I think that would be cool. Make a nice little tattoo, maybe on the upper arm or something here. And then was there anything else beyond that? Yeah, there we go. So yeah, just some variations, some starburst kind of stuff. And then, yeah, some 3D kind of action here, which is kind of cool. Of course, I don't know if 3D would, might communicate the wrong message. Even it's a 2D engine. Let's see here. My internet connection is a little slow. Yeah, so here's some, somebody, I know what the point of this one was. Somebody was like, hey, you should throw in the free edition. Make sure that you say free edition, right? Because, really, you get down to it, Corona's like, there's Corona SDK, which is free, and then you have the Enterprise Edition, right? And the Enterprise Edition is for the people who want to hook into native libraries or write native libraries or, hook into satellite systems or whatever. And so not everybody needs to pay for the Corona SD, for the Enterprise Edition, but the free edition is free, right? We just don't call it the free edition, but we could call it out here on the splash screen and say, hey, this is the free edition. And then here's another co-branded sort of option. Anyway. And then there's, put the logos like less in your face, but sort of there, but not there. So I thought those were some interesting submissions. So that's kind of where we are. And like I said, I've got a few more in my box that I need to move over. So if you're interested in that, then what you need to do is email me, charles@coronalabs.com. Go read the blog post. It's on the blog. And do that before October 1st. I think what's today? Today's like the 26th. So you've got a few days to kind of hammer something out. And it doesn't have to be the final product. As you saw Scott kind of pop together the elements that he would want to see in a splash screen, but I don't know that was, I don't think he photoshopped it up or anything. So just whatever you think you would like to see on a splash screen. So what else? Let's go back to the blog. If I can get it at full screen mode here. Screen share. And back to that. All right. Yeah, so let's go back to this preferences thing. So now there's a different way or a new way to do preferences. Rob, do you have any thoughts on the preferences thing?
Other than it means the retirement of my load save library, this is pretty cool. We're all it's now using the native way to save little chunks of information for your app like any other native app would. So if you're on a Apple operating system, it's going to use NS user defaults. If you're on Android, it's going to use the Android preferences class. Windows, you've got the option of either using an SQLite database or the Windows registry. Registry has some caveats that you may or may not want to live with. And now there's just a nice, simple API to do that. No more having to write your own file IO code or anything like that. It's can only store integer or numbers, booleans, and strings. If you need to store a table, you'd need to JSON encode it so it's serialized into a string before saving it. And I took the app that I'm working on and in about 5 minutes had ripped out my load save code and dropped in these set preferences, which is, a pretty nifty little thing. Because now, you can set just one thing. And then if that's the only thing you're changing, you're not having to necessarily write out this huge file. Though internally, that's how Android does it. It saves everything to a big XML file. This has been kind of a long time coming. It's really critical for people building tvOS apps because there's no local storage to be able to save a settings file in. So you have to either use iCloud or these preferences to be able to save settings and things like that. So it was an absolute must-have for the tvOS environment, and a really super nice to have for the rest of the platform.
Yeah, I mean, the solution that you had worked really well, and I did see that some people were like, well, I already know how to use that, so I'll just continue to use that. But I think having something built in, it always kind of trumps having something that's external, because then I know that that's always kind of an initial new person question, right? They're like, oh, well, how do I save preferences? So.
And let me share my screen real quick. So Charles, you'll have to unshare yours. Now which window? Yeah, this one. You guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, here is, you can see up here where I've commented out my previous load save code, where I just basically load in a big table, and the code there does a JSON decode on the saved file. And then, if it's a first run, I don't get the settings back, then I preset everything. But one of the cool things about doing this with Lua is be able to do this kind of test. Ship in use, it's either the preferences or 1, bang, okay, I'll initialize it to 0. So that's kind of a cool Lua feature to use. Doesn't work too well for Booleans because nil and false both resolve as false. And so when I was trying to do that on my Boolean variables, it was setting them all to true for some reason. And so I had to still do the if then else's for those. But this is pretty neat to be able to, do this kind of initialization through Lua's. It's not really a tertiary operator, but it kind of is. So,
Rob, is there a way to encrypt the data?
Well, I don't have a good answer for that. I would say probably no. Now, if you're, you could encrypt your strings before you save them. Numbers and Booleans, that's a little hard to do.
Yeah.
If you're saving a table of data, obviously you could encrypt that before you save it. Now, at least on my Mac, the info plist file that it's saved into is binary, which makes it kind of hard to find things. But then you just run the defaults command on the command line, and then you can dump the table and stuff and see what's there. So, but yeah, you'd have to handle your own encryption and in string variables.
It's interesting. I certainly like the fact that it's more of an integrated solution to be able to set preferences and stuff like that now. Seems more like a first-class citizen as opposed to just an add-on, like a library that somebody else came up with, and you have to figure out and find it and use it.
Did I stop sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, now that I've got this, I love my little load save module. I'm upset that I didn't just go ahead and stick it as part of table, so I'd have table load and table save as the names. But it's been a pretty popular thing in the forums. I figure it's one of my contributions out there for the community. And it's dead now, at least from my perspective, because I ain't going to use it anymore. So,
yeah, I think that's kind of I think that's an interesting use case for plugins, and also something I guess maybe to think about is that when you're creating a plugin or creating a library or something like that, if you're trying to solve a problem or a missing feature set, you have to ask yourself, would this eventually become part of the core? Is this truly something that lives outside as a bolt-on feature, or is it something that would be rolled into the core of the product? I think app developers, just deal with that all the time in the Apple ecosystem, right? Like there's plenty of people who have made, I don't know, like podcast aggregators and things like that. When even though Apple maybe supplies that themselves, so. I'm not sure what my point was there, but something to think about as you're creating a plugin or library. I know there was a lot of glitch games, stuff like that before, right? So some of those libraries are now, like you say, just defunct or not necessarily needed anymore.
Yeah, Graham had created a whole bunch of stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and it's just like everything else. They create it for themselves first, right? They're like, hey, we need this. I need this thing, and then they put it out. And it's sort of a share with the community. Brings a little bit of attention to your doorstep, but then at some point you just don't need it anymore. So. Well, very cool. Let's see. Anything else Robbie, is there anything else on the blog that we should discuss? Any other items you think are?
No, we've hit kind of the
Highlights.
Highlights from last week. We've got tons of more stuff in the queue, and we'll be doing some more featured apps coming soon. One thing, maybe we get some feedback here from you guys, is I've been toying with this idea of trying to do a blog post that's featuring like Screenshot Saturday, just to find another slot to get more people showing something in the blog, and where we could go through and find one of the Screenshot Saturday entries and maybe highlight it for the week or whatever, and encourage more people to post their stuff.
I think that's a great idea.
So
what would you want to see?
Did you ask me, or were you talking to Rob?
No, I was talking to Warren.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just exactly how Rob described it. Just kind of like what's in the forum now with the posts that talk about various tech issues. If you just did maybe 3 or as little as 1, it would be awesome. In the Screenshot Saturday section, that would be great.
Robert, what do you think we would do? Would people still submit it through the form, or would we want to do a form that they could submit through?
No, I would like them to submit to the forum post.
Okay. What about hashtags on social media and that sort of thing?
And then we could certainly share them out on social media from there. Once we've highlighted one in the blog post, then we can share that out through social media as well.
Yeah, get the community involved in sort of retweeting and spreading the word about a person's game.
Yeah, because we got some people doing some cool stuff, and in the regular Monday through Friday news cycle that we have, it's a little tough to squeeze in featured posts every week. And even when I am able to get one in, I'm only able to get one in. So this would be kind of a second opportunity to get some more stuff highlighted.
Let me ask Stephen, Warren, you guys are active on the community. You kind of pay attention to things that come across the wire. Do you like the posting schedule that we have right now? I mean, we have about one thing a day that comes out on the blog. Would more than that be too much, or would you like to see more? What do you think?
Yeah, I like the posting schedule now. I would like to see more posts on games and behind the scenes type stuff, like what Rob was just mentioning. But right now, I think it's a pretty good number of posts. I go to it every morning, and it's great.
Yeah, because one of the things that we kind of struggle with is we don't want things to get buried, and so if we kind of have to time things. I mean, Charles is posting his, developer interviews and things like that. And if we turn around half a day later and post an announcement or something, now you got to start scrolling down to see some of this stuff, and it starts getting kind of buried in a hurry. So, we don't want to overwhelm the blog, but at the same time, I think, there's a lot more stuff we'd like to be able to share out there. So trying to find that sweet spot is a bit challenging.
Yeah, there was, I personally, I've always been kind of a person who's like, if I don't have anything to say, then I don't want to say anything, right? I don't need to sort of jump up and down and say, look at me. But in a social media world, it kind of is to your advantage to be like, jump up and down, look at me, and not in an obnoxious way, but in a way that sort of says, hey, you just never know when somebody's going to be paying attention, and you never know what's going to spark their excitement so that they'll want to participate, right? So if something comes across the screen, you're like, oh, look, there's a bitmap thing. Oh, look, there's this preferences thing. Oh, screenshot Saturday. Oh, bing, and then there it goes. So you just never know what's going to resonate with somebody. And
I know, I guess a year or so ago, we had gotten into a very regimented pattern. Tuesday was tutorial day. Wednesday was FAQ day. Monday was Charles's opportunity to post his Corona Geek stuff. And we got into that very rhythmic thing, and I felt it made the blog very stale. Yeah. There was no predictability to it, or no randomness to it. Now, I'm trying to mix things up so that, we're getting more of a variety of topics out there. At the same time, trying not to overwhelm at the same time. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys say, Scott's in here saying he wants more info.
So,
well, just to touch on what Charles was saying earlier, which is you only want to say certain things when they're ready, like technical information. I think that's totally right on. But if on days where there isn't that, then you could fill it in with exciting stuff that's from the community, the people working on games. And that would give you more posting and still parse out the information when it needs to be parsed out on the technical side.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the Screenshot Saturday stuff would be great. We could, like you say, we even if it was one, you'd be like, hey, take a look at this. Bam. More of a...
And it would encourage more participation. We've kind of got two announcement threads in the forums anyway. There's one where people just announce works in progress or finished apps, and then there's a Screenshot Saturday. And sometimes they kind of compete with each other. But, I'd like to see more people announcing their products. There's another thing just completely blows my mind about this process. Over the past week, I've approved 2 or 3 first-time posters who have completed games and have never made a forum post asking a question. It's like, I know when I started, I was asking questions left and right, trying to figure things out. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. But, still it'd be nice to hear from some of these people as they're building their products. So.
Yeah, I think that personally, I think that goes back to, one, the level of support needed, right? How much support do you need in order to get something going? But I think it also goes back to this idea that some people they don't use forums, right? They just don't use forums. Like they'll search and they'll find the answer that they need, or kind of, help leapfrog to the next piece of information. But for the most part, they just don't participate in forums. As evidenced by my own behavior, I rarely participate in the forum just because I'm usually looking for a piece of information, but then I don't really get involved in the conversation. And that's just my personality. And it's not specific to Corona. It's just specific to forums in general. I've just never been a forums person. I used to run a community with a friend of mine who actually managed the entire forum and had had other participants in there that he gave like titles and responsibilities to and managed, that kind of stuff. And he just loved forums. But I personally just see them as more of a utility than anything else.
Yeah, it's got to be the right topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like when I bought my Prius a few years ago, the Prius has a big community, and but I didn't join. I just went and read stuff that was there anonymously, learned what I needed to learn, and then moved on. And I think a lot of people handle forums that way. Right.
Yeah. Probably true. Well, yeah, but I would love to see. I personally would. I don't know. I think the more we can put out on the blog, the more people can participate. The more everything. So, all right, you guys have anything? I think we should wrap it up. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about or share before we leave? Are you working on anything in particular, Warren? Are you got some new stuff in the wings?
No, I don't have anything new. I'm just slugging away trying to get my game released before this whole Apple store closed down for Christmas.
Oh, right. Yeah, right. Typically when do they do that? What's the time frame on that?
I think it's. I don't know. Rob probably would know more. I should probably look into that, considering I need to get it in under the deadline. But yeah,
they usually close down around December 20th, and it's usually 10 days to 2 weeks, and then they basically start back up after the first of the year.
So you at least got a good 2 months before.
Well, I'm trying to beat the rush too before it, so I'm hoping October, sometime in October.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a surge of app sales before the holiday like that. Yeah, I would expect there would be a bunch after the holiday because of people getting new devices and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to be in the store because you know some kid opens his iPad Christmas morning or whatever, he's going to start downloading apps. So, being in the store before the shutdown is definitely a good thing.
Warren, are you doing any sort of list building or anything like that so that you'll have people to kind of notify when it goes live?
Yeah, starting to wrap that up now.
Okay.
But it just started.
Right. Yeah. Seems like that would be a great thing. Cause like Rob's talking about, and now you're kind of depending on, I mean, some people try to time it, right? So they try to time the release so that they show up in the list so that when somebody goes to look for the apps, they're there at the moment that they're looking for them. But having somebody that you can mail to and say, hey, it's now available at that time gives you a little more level of control over the process.
Yeah, a whole show on this topic would be great. I could use it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we should put something together. I think that would be great. There's a bunch of different ways to do that, and we can talk about that for sure. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for being here. We've talked all about plugins and we talked about bitmap options and features and plugins and Bluetooth and what was it? Taptic engines and OnePasswords. And I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff going on. And so paid plugins are on the horizon. It's really exciting. Looking forward to that. Can't wait to see what the community comes out with and want them to be able to have the opportunity to be rewarded for the work that they're doing. And I think that's just going to continue to grow. And then more and more features are going to be bolted onto Corona because of the plugin system and because of the marketplace. So it's just exciting times to be here. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back here week after next to talk all about mobile, desktop, and TV app development using Corona SDK. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Bye.
Done and done. Cool.